this afternoon I'm here to share my experience regarding matters of education and ICT. Education and ICT. I tend to believe that at the end of our learning session, we'll engage ourselves in a project. We'll engage ourselves in a project, a mini project. At the end of our learning session, we'll engage ourselves in a mini project. So, my talk is about blended learning in higher education with regard to curriculum. And now that we have discussed about the curriculum, we are now going to discuss about pedagogies, the skills of teaching. But the skills of teaching who? The adult learner in our case. As educators, we are exposed and we have the due responsibility of teaching students and our medical students, but teach them from an innovative point of view. I believe all of us have had an opportunity to teach the direct students and the adult learners. These are two different people whose their learning needs are different and their styles of learning are usually different. This afternoon, we'll be asking ourselves, how best can we engage our adults in learning even while they are working at their normal place? So welcome. So the following are our learning objectives. We look at the definition of the term blended learning. We'll provide an overview of blended learning, that is the historical perspective and where we are today. And then we'll look at the development and use of blended learning in a classroom setup and away from the classroom. Then we'll look at the components of blended learning and how to incorporate it in teaching. Then we'll look at the difference between a new concept which is called synchronized and asynchronized learning. Then we'll identify the common tools that we use in incorporating blended learning, and this is where the projects now come. So by the end of this class, we are going to engage ourselves in a mini project. Then we'll look at the advantages and disadvantages of this model of teaching and learning. And finally, we are going to ask ourselves this question: what is the role of IE in blended learning? And above, I tend to think you understand what I'm saying. So, there's a nice picture there that is demonstrating our basic tool in the kitchen. But what could be this tool in our kitchen? It's a blender, isn't it? It's a common tool, a tool that is commonly used in kitchen, but within that tool, it has some, now open your eye wider, it has some components. You can see that. We have one of the components. Can somebody say what you're able to extract from that picture? Just an overview. You can see what? There's an office chair, isn't it? There's an office chair. Within that office chair, there's a big book. Then that book, over there we have a briefcase, and it talks about learning. And it is covered. We forgot to note that the blender is covered. The blender can only work once you cover it, isn't it? Then once you cover it, you're able to get the end product after blending has taken place. But now, away from the kitchen, when we ask ourselves about the academic matters, what is this strategy about? At the extreme end there, with what appears to look like a juice. It's about lunchtime, so it is appealing. And therefore, every learner would wish to learn in the best way possible and an appealing way possible from a traditional way of learning. Professor taught us how books were imported and how it took long for these books to get to the university, and no sooner than later those books will be worked upon to create what will be more accommodative to the learner. This afternoon we're talking about blending. Okay, so Garrison and Kainuk are great scholars of academic in blending. says that blended learning is the integration of classroom learning, that is face-to-face learning and online learning experience. And the Oxford Dictionary confirms that blended learning is a style of education in which students learn via electronic and online media as well as use of traditional method. Nderu et al. 2016 says blended is a method of teaching in integrating teaching and learning, digital media and traditional instructors' classroom activity, hence giving students a flexible way of learning. When you look at all these definitions, they are talking about a mixed-up form of learning, a strategy that will enrich the learner with adequate learning experience. The issue is the learning experience. Like we all will be awaiting for the lunch to go and take lunch. We'll not only take lunch, but we'll also enjoy the lunch and eating experience. Meaning that in that sittings that will be seated in that artillery, we'll be able to interact with our colleagues whom we've never met, and above all. So in teaching, it is required that for us to impact our experience to the learners, we should adopt an innovative approach of teaching. The teaching is the story you want to let the student have, your experience, that they will carry with them in practicing in the field to be whom you wish them to be. And Professor deeply discussed about the issue of review of the curriculum, what I may assume to be an expo factor in terms of impacting a learner. Blending is the approach. So this slide is just giving us a history of where teaching began and where we are today. Historically, development of blended learning according to Ross and B. and Gagnet 2009 says that between 1960s to 70s, there was one big computer that were used. That is at the developed world in US. No sooner than later, between 70s and 80s, a TV-based support system learning was developed. It came with its own challenges, and education and technology developments has it that it was abandoned. In late 90s and 80s, where a majority of you belong and you're in campus, you had your own CDs in the rooms to listen to music, to play music, and not only that, to watch movies. That has been forgotten, including a floppy A3A. I don't know who has one in their custody. Yeah, the gramophone and the others. Ladies and gentlemen, between 20th century until today, first generation of website instruction was generated, so it has been there. But now, above all, as development of technology is taking place and continuing to develop, blending of teaching and learning is the thing to go as of today. Many investors have embarked on impacting a lot of energy in developments of how to teach learners through developments of new applications that we are going to learn this afternoon. And perhaps we'll challenge ourselves. Which are these applications that we have at our disposal? So currently, there are issues that affect how blending is taking place in many universities, globally and locally. So, Aniso et al. 2019 said technology advancement in the world is influencing many disciplines and according to training at universities. And you'll agree that as the world population is increasing, there too, universities are also investing heavily towards adopting of new technology in order to reach many students. Maseno University is not exempted. Nderu of University of Science and Technology, where I come from, are not exempted. And many other universities. Bloomsfield 2014 globally says universities are struggling to adapt to new styles of teaching and learning in order to meet the emerging dynamic needs of the learner. Currently, the university this year has admitted many students. And not only that, the government also has come up with the common courses that all students first years must partake. But where are the classrooms to teach these students? One of these courses is digital learning, life skills, among many other courses. Where will these students fit? Where will these students fit? And we also have basic life skills as a social life skills course, where we as health educators will be assigned. These courses is to be taught by doctors. But you have these students from high school who have come, and there are many, 5,000 or 4,500 students. Is there a room to have these students be taught in one place? The answer is no. And they come from different disciplines. But because it's a common course, this claim affirms to that we have many students that we are getting posted to the universities by the government and PSSP students, but the room for teaching these students is limited or straining. So we are challenged that we as educators must also pull our socks and march to the tests. And as these students come to the universities, the students are technologically enabled, or they adapt quickly to the needs and the demands. You are the parents who sponsors, who support your students, your child, whoever it is you support. And you are all aware that before these students come to school, they will ask for devices to help them learn. Kibuku et al. 2022 says, African universities are more disadvantaged in implementing virtual learning, despite the need due to socio-economical problems that needs to be addressed today. That is what we have in our country. So we need to ask ourselves, have we had that opportunity to teach, especially first-year students, common courses? And this, not only first-year, second years, these students who are coming to school and they have a lot of challenges, and reaching them is difficult. Even just getting a cell phone, and that is a smartphone, is difficult. And yet we have to teach them, we have to share notes and all this. Nyerere 2020 says there are many mature entry students in Kenya and who would wish to continue their professional development at the university level, but they are unable due to rigid university education system that is being strongly implemented. So it is a problem that is there, and which requires our change of mindset and adoption. So blended learning basically is a combination of face-to-face learning experience and an online learning. You integrate both of them. Face-to-face is the traditional learning method where we are seated like this and we are interacting with the Malim in class on a one-to-one, and therefore it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. Today, we are being asked to be here from morning to evening. The question we have as adult learner goes by one, the level of concentration span, isn't it? What is the level of concentration span? Because of such a complaint that has been shared among many scholars, there was a higher need of adopting to a new, innovative way of reaching learners at their working place, at their comfort, where they are able to learn by themselves. That is online learning. So that is online learning. So when you're talking about blending, is an example of a mortar and brick. This building has so many components that has been used to make it as it is, and the basic materials are mortar and brick. So mortar and brick will undergo a chemical reaction to cause solidation and formation, and the wall will stand. And online learning is a soft learning of learning at one person's place when they are able to learn at their own pace. So it requires involvement of human beings and technology. The integration here is we have to have a human factor. The human factor, it is we. We have been taught about change agent. In that class, we were taught that today we are being stimulated to become the changing agent in education, the advocacy of changing agent in education. We were told that there are three phases of change which must be executed by we educators. That purely lies to the motivation. Blending is involving, quite involving. I believe some of you have been involved in developing modules so that you can share with the learners. And it is true, developing a module requires a lot of energy, commitment, so that you are able to share that module with the students, and the students can be able to interact with the learning material and benefit from that learning material. It is the motivation. The motivation to execute the learning in blended mode begins with the lecturer. We had a challenge after COVID where all the courses and that particular time was supposed to be put on an online model, commonly Moodle. Students were to sit for the examination, but it took a lot of time to execute that order because of the challenges that it comes with. So we have personalization. You have to make the platform that you are using be customized to fit the learner's learning styles. It requires immediate feedback. When you post and integrating questions to the learners will give feedback and they will request you also respond. It requires fluency and listening, relevance and discipline. On the other side, we are saying that for blending to take place, it requires mobility. Structures have to be there. This is infrastructures and especially ICT. So training institutions are demanded by Q to make sure that the ICT platforms are available and working in place for blending to take place. We ourselves as educators, we are also challenged that we should have smartphones, internet enabled with bundles, and students can reach you at any point. We have self-study and discovery. Because of evolution, today we are going to learn about the new apps. How can we use the new apps that we have available to integrate our blending on our existing platform? I tend to believe majority of the universities have Moodle as the primary platform for integrating blending and blended learning mode. So that is very important. Then there is reduced costs is very important, and global reach to help others. Blended learning, therefore, in other words, helps the students to transit from passive learning to active learning. Passive learning to active learning. Because, as we say, the lecture method, but a lecture method is a one-way method where the principal teacher remains active and only share information with the learner. What happens with the learner? The learner becomes, and they end up getting astray, out of box. So if the teacher is not active, the students may get astray and the student may not learn effectively. So the purpose of blended learning, advocacy of blended learning, is to help the students become active in class. You engage them at any time. You post questions to them. They respond. You follow up to make sure that at least all the students are Traditional, what happens with our timetable in school? Our timetable says if my class is on Thursday afternoon and I have one class for 3 hours, traditionally, you'll meet the student the next week on Thursday. What happens in between the 7 days hours? We are not sure of what the students are doing. However, while blending, the students are able to follow the discussions forums that are created on online platforms, and you tend to engage the students. You tend to engage the students throughout. But not all students will actively participate. So we have models of blended learning. Probably I've just mentioned them. Maybe you can take a moment and ask your colleague, have you ever had blended learning? And which models do you know? Take a moment to ask your colleague, which model do you know? The models of blended learning. Which model? Don't Google because we are coming to that. Just ask them, do you know any blended model? Thank you. Thank you. So one of the blended model is face-to-face. Oh, you're nodding, yes. So you can clap for yourself. So, yes. So we are coming to that. One of the model of blended is called face-to-face driver model. So face-to-face driver model is this. So you have a course. You've been assigned a course. Call this course anatomy. And just anatomy. Or let's just use a simple course. An RH course. So let's take a course in RH, reproductive health. You've been assigned in this trimester. You have 14 weeks to teach. You have the course content with you. And based on what professor gave us an example of him. He's in class today. 2 days down the line, he will be in his clinic working. And therefore, how do you manage this student? So while blending, what you're supposed to do is to develop that course. You take the course outline and customize the duties to the students, your duties, the roles, and the students. But the first week in the initial classes, you're supposed to appear in class physically. So the purpose for this is to stimulate you and the students to know each other, the students to know how you think, how you behave, you set grounds, you take them through the course outline so that they will know the expectation. While doing that, that will be face-to-face. And perhaps you teach the first and the second topics. Thereafter, you will now, because you've distributed your class, you will discuss, this class will be discussion forums, we'll have online classes, you share the links, we are coming to that, and you will be able to take the students through. So you can do initial, the first 2 weeks, the sixth week, just to see the students' reaction, and the last 2 weeks before the examination. These other times when you're having an interaction with the students, you're supposed to teach them online. That's the face-to-face model. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. We have another model, which is, we are coming to that. We have the rationale model. Let's just go through. We have the rationale models. We have the flex model. We have an online model. We have one that is called an Alcatel Lab model and enriched virtual model. Other scholars call it flip side classroom. Flip side classroom. So we are going through these models, so at least you can ask yourself, for the purpose of stimulating the learners, which model should you use in which trimester or when? So we have said that face-to-face is typically a school structure where the student functions in a various levels of ability and mastery, which is integrated between, I've given an illustration to that. Whereas the rationale model, students rotate either in a fixed schedule or a teacher direction among the learning models that are there on online. So you have your students whom you teach them the traditional method in class. The students come to the clinic. In the clinic we have skill simulating model. In the skill simulating model you only have a few students who will come to the skills lab. But when they come to the skills lab, they have the objectives. So they will rotate. You have a class of 45 students. So you'll say, I'll be teaching second stage of labor, and therefore because of this requires simulation, and therefore it has to be a hands-on. So the students will come in the lab. You will take the students by use of a checklist. Step by step, the procedure as it's supposed to be undertaken. While you do this in an enhanced environment, there will be a video and a camera that will record the first group and all these other groups as you've been teaching them. You take them through the step by step on how to undertake that procedure, and thereafter you will move to a different room and view the demonstration as you've done or as you've taught with the students. And the students will be able to critique themselves to see their area of improvement and their area of weakness. Thereafter, that very first video will be shared among the groups. So in the evening, they will sit among the groups. You will post the video, recorded video to the students forum, so that now it will stimulate them. Those who have not come, the other group that has not come in the lab. So they will move in that group like that. They're able to see the steps that you've taken the students in undertaking the procedure. Then it will reduce your time in teaching the subsequent groups because they'll have already seen. So that is a very important aspect of teaching, and that teaching approach is called the rationale. You are taking one group, you undertake a procedure, the procedure is repeated, the procedure is recorded, you take time to go through the procedure with the students, you critique the areas of improvement and the areas of, because majorly when you're teaching the students with a step by step, the tenderness of the student forgetting in a repeated mode is usually higher. There are procedures that you're supposed to take, and in the procedure manual says there are 18 steps. There is a high likelihood that 70%, 60% of an individual, because he's a student, may end up forgetting the steps. So immediately before they leave the learning environment, which is a skills lab, you are with the students in the ward, it is always better that you have to explain to the students the steps and the critical steps that you felt that the student was not able to recall and underperformed the procedure. Now that elicits critical thinking to the learner, because it will help them recall that they missed a critical step, and in a subsequent occurrence, in the second cycle, you will observe that there will be a higher learning level of the learner. So that model is called rationale model. So the question I have for the forum here, are we practicing? Could there be a possibility we are practicing that kind of a model within our setup? Is there a possibility within our setup? The rationale model. So you will at the beginning of the trimester, you will tell the student, this trimester I'm going to use a rationale model of teaching. You will be divided in groups. You will be introduced to the learning objective, all of you at the same time. You will take time for you to appear in the skills lab to undertake the procedure. And then you do the reinforcement. It has its advantages and disadvantages. Think about that. The next model we've said is called flex model. The flex model requires one-to-one technology access. So, this afternoon, I'm going to demonstrate on how to use a mindset. A mindset or mind mapping app. An interactive app that if you use it in class and you're discussing with the students, there is a high likelihood of the students to remember what you have graphically taught by demonstration as you interact, because you will get response from the learner and you will put the response from the learner in a record form, but in a diagrammatic form, say a chart. So what that means in this model is that we have each of us procedures. Assuming today I've been assigned to teach you on how to use a Moodle. So we'll be required that you come with your laptops, okay? And then we'll take you through the procedure on how to create a course, how to invite participants, how to set cards, how to mark a card, how to mark exam, how to give response, and how to attach files. That could be an example. The model and appropriate model of use is a flexible model. So it is an one-to-one phase and you interact with an online access technology. So here is a flexible model that requires that there is one-to-one. One-to-one means that is the student and the teacher. The teacher or the lecturer or the educator that is there is taking the students. Now, when you're introducing a course and you expect to have these courses, it is usually prudent to have the first 2 or 3 sessions with the students to take them through the platform. Otherwise, if you don't do that, the students may reject joining the class, adopting the class, and that vividly will deter the learning model or the learning approach, flexible model. We have the lab, the one lab model program depending on pure online delivery. Then we have the Alcatel model, which combines face-to-face with the elective courses chosen by a learner according to their interest and learn. This one is interesting. A learner will register for 8 courses in the university. We have the cognitive course, which will be mandatory, probably. The students have to have face-to-face. But we have the general university course. For example, sociology. So the student may decide, okay, we have 2 platforms. One class is physical classroom and it is restricted with 50 students. The other classroom is an online classroom. They may decide to join that particular class, which is purely online. It's called an Alcatel Lab model, combining face-to-face with elective courses chosen by the students. So they will come at the beginning of the class, in the introduction of the trimester, they introduce to the course and norms, and then they go and learn and interact with the learning material. Okay? Then we have the last one is called enriched mode. Learning is divided between online and offline. So for the adult learners, you say the first 6 weeks we'll have face-to-face class. Thereafter, we'll have an online class. You can dispense the learning material either in a soft or a hard copy, and then they will come. We have other approaches and components of blended learning, which is called synchronized and asynchronized components of a blended learning. And this involves use of face-to-face, which we've mentioned, tutorial. Students will come, you'll take the students through the concept you want to teach for them to learn. We have coaching, and especially where there is difficulties. So when you introduce the students on a concept, today I'm teaching about an app. So you'll have the students come to class and we learn about disorders of blood. One of them is anemia. Then while in that class, you'll post for them assignments online, and then you let the students go and search for information and give the response within 7 days. You realize in a class of 100, depending on the interest of learner, 60% of the students will be able to comply with the task. 40% because of either challenges they experience or attitude and many other variables that we may not be able to mention, may not be able to submit the assignments on time. So what you need to do is to listen to them on an individual basis, ask them, and Moodle is good in monitoring. You'll monitor when the students, because you give them an alert, you say, assignment is date on this due. So it will give alerts to the students. They'll keep on saying, hey, I've not submitted so and so assignments. And thereafter, when the date comes, it closes. And allow the students, your time for submitting assignments has closed. So the students will call you to provide them coaching. We take them through step by step, because different learners with different learning ability and their pace of learning is different. We have classroom teaching, which you've mentioned. We have workshop like we are doing now, conferences, meeting, and labs. That is, those are a few components. The synchronized electronic components here include internet conferencing, which is happening today in the world. We have audio conference, phone. Our phone has become even smarter than the computer. Will you agree with me? The phones are more smarter than the computers have here today. Then we have live video conference, virtual classrooms. So common virtual classrooms you have, you're going to see that now, is what you be doing. Then we have instant messaging that usually we engage. In asynchronous component, it means not really time or on time, because what will happen here, asynchronous components is an online self-paced learning content web page, including email. You post an assignment today and ask the students, please, every Friday I'll be submitting a case study. Every Friday I'll be uploading a case study or submitting forwarding a case study for the weekend. Some students will see this assignment on Monday. Hello? Some students will see this on Monday when it is due. So we have electronic support system, job aids, web computer instructions, books, article, and CD-ROMs that we said are still there. You purchase a textbook, you'll find they have already kept one behind the textbook. And though the trends are changing. Then we have the videos. Today, our phones are taking records of this. So, which are these learning tools? So, which are these learning platforms that we've been using or we are supposed to use? I am supposed to teach my students an integrated learning platform, my class. Which are these learning platforms that we've been using? I've mentioned for universities, most of the universities are using a learning management system, LMS, and the common LMS here we have is Moodle. Are we familiar with Moodle? Do we have accounts? Yeah, so Moodle requires a big cloud capacity, and especially the budget provides for that. However, we have so we've said we have Google has provided options initially before COVID. A majority of users were not commonly using Google, but we thank God we came with the practice, people have adopted Google use. The usage of Google has gone up as compared to before COVID. So Google has Google Classrooms. You are aware of that. So you will create a Google Classroom and invite the participants. It is a module on itself, isn't it? And so it has its advantages. It's a common platform we are supposed to use. And so we have Google Meets. So Google Meets is a common platform me and you and the majority are using, not only in the educational sector, but in all the industry. Conferences and meetings, we have Google Meet. But it's Google Meets also come with challenges if the users are not well oriented. So as educators, and especially when you assign students, today learning in the evening is the norm. I'm making my own assumption that after we all leave here, we have classes to handle in the evening. So when you get home, you will quickly take your supper, settle the children, and you hibernate somewhere, and you start teaching. That's my thinking. So Google has brought everything to the learning to be, the learning and the working at home to be at par with our expectation. We are able to attend workshop and we deliver to our students. We also have Zoom. Nowadays, Zoom is not common because it has after 45 minutes, it has to log out unless you subscribe. So a majority of users, if I'm making an hypothetical statement, there is a high attendance the audience I'm addressing this afternoon are using Google Meet and Zoom. That is just my hypothesis. So Zoom has its own challenges, but we have story mapping. In Kenyan context, we have Mizizi education website. These are premium, school, Mwalimu Plus, and WhatsApp. So in this list, the common one that a majority of us are using is Google Meet. Google Classroom is the module we have for the university. And we also have LMS. It has a free package, but sometimes it has limitations. So you can ask yourself now as an user, which one have you prescribed to? The next one is our phones. So you can also teach. We have said that the cell phones are also good. So there should be no excuse that you cannot teach a class because you are traveling, you never carried with you your computer, because these phones are smarter. So we have Androids, apps for whiteboard, Jamboard, Google Classroom, Quizlet, Scan Academy, Explain Everything, Padlets, Minecraft, and Scratch. However, they come with ads on, and they may entangle you to payment. So that's the only disadvantage. But we have this for purpose of you trying to experiment. You can use one of these apps. Classroom, Google Classroom is straightforward, and so we'll see that. So increased education technology, easy use to use software and a wide variety of mobile and digital platform, as we have seen that case. Therefore, blended learning considers strengths and weaknesses in both traditional classroom in teaching and online learning, which merges the strengths of both. It is a hybrid. Others call it hybrid method. That when you use, you can manage your student. You are seated here, and you want to see whether the students are responding. All you need to do is you have adopted one of those platforms. In fact, we have Moodle app. Moodle is there. You can follow your students and see the response they are getting. So it has advantages and disadvantages. One, increased access. Advantages of blended learning is that it can be used by many users. We have seen where common courses in the university, if you are assigned, you better go the Moodle way, the blended way, because you'll reach many students. But the only disadvantage will come to that improved communication. Self-pacing means a learner can learn at their own pace. You share the content with the learner will learn at their own pace. In learning, we have different types of learner. We have higher achievers, we have moderate achievers, and we have low achievers. The goal of the educator is to get all these learners to the end point, and there too they will become what you wish to be, the product of education. So it increases the students' motivation. If there are students who can say, if you ask students in the university, in this course, who do you prefer to teach you? They will say so and so doesn't like teaching us online. And even in the afternoon, when it is raining, the students may not come in class. They will tell you, in fact, nowadays it appears like you are bargaining with the students, especially when you are making up for classes. You'll ask them, okay, sorry, I was not there for this, I missed my class. When can we have, they'll tell you, Malim, let's have an online class. So if you are a user of blended mode, the students will follow you. And the students will rate us. Improved efficiency in classroom, use of textbook drive down cost, because students now do not buy books. You share with them soft copies of information, they will learn at their own pace. Access to global resources, all they need to do, Professor said here, you will only need to Google what you want and you get it there and there. Interaction with the teacher and people from different parts of global world is there, the students are able to do that. So it also helps develop knowledge of using the latest technology and internet. We have to check through what is new. What is new? I've just said there is a scratch, an app. And we as learners, we as educators, if we are not on that scratch, the students will be discussing you when you are not aware. So it's always good to find out what is latest and what is trendy, what are the advantages and disadvantages. So more student-centered approach to education, because the students will be able to interact with you. Learners keep pace with that advancement of the new technology development. They are able to tell you. In fact, when you go to class, I ask them, and is there any app that is up for us to use? They will tell you something you've never known. Then you have to ask yourself, I have to pick this and follow up. Then students connect with concepts of a deeper level because of the interactions. Then we have disadvantages is lack of motivation. If you don't motivate the students, they will not be motivated. There will be decreased communication. There are some who will not engage. So what happens with these students who do not engage? You have posed a question, a case study, and you have a tutorial of 15 students. One of them or two of them are not following up. So it is we as educators are supposed to follow the students who are not engaging and ask them, I'm taking my class attendance and seeing that you're not responding, what could be the problem? Then lack of learning in isolation is a disadvantage. Some students may keep with them in the room, they don't want to mix with other students, and that will disadvantage them. And lack of hands-on learning opportunity. The other one is lack of adequate feedback and lack of collaborative tasks. So, prerequisite for blended learning. If we are to teach, because we are talking of innovative blended learning in curriculum, it requires the teacher to be well trained, versed with the methods of teaching, the teacher with a scientific attitude. The second speaker was talking about research, and he was posing to us critical questions to think. I'm thinking, how best can I teach this concept from the traditional approach? Then we have teachers with wider outlook and positive change towards change, especially with ICT, adequate ICT infrastructure. This goes back to the institutions. Initially during the second presenter, she posed a question which I responded. I happened to have had a privilege to conduct research in blended learning, and in this group, we had 4 universities that were involved. In this group, we had control experiment, intervention experiment. We did a baseline survey, intervention survey, and we followed up. In that study, ladies and gentlemen, we realized that a majority of the learner had a significant performance academic output. What happens is this. It appears that the students were only following the post that we have been posting students for forums and discussions every week, and that's where the examination was drawn from. You can imagine that. So then we have formative evaluation. We've been taught about that. For you to understand whether there is effectiveness in teaching, especially in blended learning, you must follow the students. So how do we do this in blending? You are required to post quizzes every week. But now you change on the assessment mode. It could be MCQs this week, week 1, week 2, LAQs, week 3, long answer critical questions, that is case studies. Week 4, they can do a brief review of say a case study of a patient who has been managed, and they give a response to that. So that will be a direct way of evaluating that. And then you reveal the results. So Moodle is good. The challenge comes with the Moodle, is what we are going to see that. What is the role of the lecturer and the students in blended learning? What is the role of the lecturer and the students in blended learning? Please take a moment and ask your colleague that question. What role are we supposed to play? So let's get to response. 2 roles. The role, my role as an educator is teaching, yes, she says teaching, but modality, innovative, isn't it? So as educators, we are asked to become innovative. We create courses, we create those courses, and at least schedule activities for every week so that the students can follow you. The students should also enroll themselves and respond to the questions, and you provide the feedback. We have challenges which we've mentioned there. The challenges include technology access, design, safety. Now, safety comes with the examination. We are supposed to now say you're supposed to give a cut. How do you enable the cut that the students do not cheat? So when you post the cut or examination, you're supposed to use a time browser. The time browser needs to be limited. If you have 40 questions, how many minutes do you allocate? 40 questions? Yes, if it's MCQs, 40 questions? 40 minutes. In MCQ development of examination, we were taught that one examination item is the learner is supposed to spend how many minutes? Ask your colleague. Yes, I've set an exam, I've posted an exam. That is assessment and measurements, how to develop examination items. And you be fair to yourself and to the learner. We have clinical critical questions that are a 5-sentence. Will you award 1 minute to that question? And you have MCQs that are 1 to A to E. A question for us to reflect on. So, when you set an MCQ and you post that examination, it is always wise for you to attempt that examination and see how long you have taken. Isn't it? So that is what you are taking. Then, of course, skill development and motivation. So that's our reference. Before we summarize, I just wanted to demonstrate something here. I said we'll come up with a mind map project. A mind map project. If time allowed, it will be prudent of us to, before you go to class, to develop a mind map. I just created this while I was sitting there. So mind mapping is very important to summarize your class. So how do you go about that? You just go to mind map application online. Mind map application online. If time had allowed, we could have gone for break. But after coming from break, all of us get in groups, have your computer in 5, and come up with a project, think of a topic. So it is interactive. When you ask students questions, they give you the response and you add. Supposedly, I'm asking a student and I want to add an item. You just come here, add an item. You just type there. They will give you another idea. Whatever they tell you and you feel it is correct, you can add here. And you're creating trees. I'm just creating trees like that. I'm just doing randomly. So you will end up developing a concept like mind mapping. Take a full scope, think of an idea, think of tributaries, think of many variables that can affect that, and then you download and share with the learner. It is the best way to learn. Ladies and gentlemen, in our learning today, we are discussing about blended learning. We have defined what is blended learning. We have looked at the traditional perspective of blended learning from its development to where we are today. We are saying that artificial intelligence is influencing how blended learning is done. When you give students assignments and it is due or they are sitting for the examination, be aware our students are using artificial intelligence to make correspondence to. The question is then, how do we nurture creativity, critical thinking? Have you ever given students assignments and when they bring the assignments, the response is the same? Even in cheating in examination, isn't it? Yeah, it is happening. So, and we cannot run away from artificial intelligence. It is the thing, it is there, it is here. We have looked at different components, we have looked at challenges, and we are asking ourselves, what is the way forward? It's a challenge that we need to reflect on. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.